Well, thank you everyone for your attendance today. I appreciate your turnout and it's going to be a very interesting session. My name is Dr. Peter John Chen. I'm a lecturer in politics and media in the Department of Government and International Relations here at the University of Sydney. And I'm very pleased to welcome you today to the start of a new series of scholarly talks that a number of universities are putting together. Academics who are interested in the intersection of politics and new media, called the Online Media Group. We have a website where you can register your interest in the discussion series, fillmeup.info, and we hope to have a range of events over the coming decades, let's be optimistic here, that focus really on the relationship between technology and politics, both domestically and internationally. Before we begin proceedings, I'd like to acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional owners of the land in which we stand, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. It is upon their ancestral lands that the University of Sydney is built. As we share our knowledge, teaching, learning and research practices here at the University, we may also respect the knowledge embedded forever within Aboriginal custodianship of country. Now, the speakers that we have today are a very interesting group of speakers who I think will have a range of unique and very valuable views on the topic that we're talking about today. In no order of preference, just alphabetical order, we have Mr. Tim Andrews, who's one of the co-founders and the current managing editor of the Menzies House group of blogs. Now, we're very pleased to have Tim here today because we welcomed him back to the fellowship of the University of Sydney. He is one of our graduates with degrees in both economics and law and a master's in public policy. And it sounds like you're obviously brewing up for a PhD entry program. And I don't say that simply because of the fee revenue that the university is going to gain from you. He has a very distinguished political history. He served as the president of the Australian Liberal Students Association and the Vice President of Policy of the New South Wales Young Liberals from 2006 to 2008. He is the current Treasurer of the Australian Libertarian Society and serves on the Board of Management of the HR Nichols Society. Joining us by phone, are you still there, Andy? Can you hear anything? He is still here, Andy can hear us, is Mr. Andy Fleming. Andy is a Melbourne-based author and anarchist activist. He's a long-time observer of the far right in Australia and internationally, and is a media commentator on both far right extremism and related topics. He is the author of the well-known and well-regarded Slack Bastard blog. I'm pleased to introduce another colleague today, Dr. Richard Stanton. Richard teaches in political communication and corporate strategy here in the Department of Media and Communications. He teaches both the postgraduate and undergraduate level. His research focuses on relationships and tensions between journalistic practice, public relations and politics, so he's an excellent speaker for our topic today. His other interests involve independent candidates in elections, and he recently undertook a participant observer project where he ran for election in the New South Wales Legislative Council in 2011. His most recent book is Do What They Like, the Media and Australian Election Campaign in 2010, so he's another well-placed observer of this. And last but not least, Dr. Derek Wilding. I'm very pleased to announce Derek's attendance here today, and we also have to have a special thank you. Without Derek's keen eye for detail, this event would never have been realised because of my poor scheduling. But Derek is the Director of Standards at the Australian Press Council. He joined the Australian Press Council in mid-2011, taking up this newly created position, which shows us that the APC is an emerging and developing organisation, even as it's being subject to review and some criticism that I think we'll talk about today. He's running the Standards Project, a major new initiative of the Council that will review and modernise all of the existing standards, consult with the media and community on relevant topics to standards within the Australian media. Before joining the Australian Press Council, Dr. Wilding has an impressive CV, including 5 years in the Australian Communications and Media Authority, another organisation we're going to talk about, I think, a fair bit today. He was also the Director of the Communications Law Centre, back when it was at the White House, is that correct? At the University of New South Wales, a very august body in the area of media law in Australia, and many other positions very, very relevant to our topic today. And so he brings a wealth of expertise both from the academy but also from the regulatory end of this discussion. Without much further ado, I'm just going to introduce our speakers in turn to give 5 to 10 minute talk just to introduce their topic and give us an overview of their perspective on this issue. So we're going to start with Richard Stanton, then Tim Andrews, then we're going to have Andy Fleming, and finally Derek Wilding. And hopefully this will be a very engaging discussion of the recommendations of the Finklestein Inquiry into media, not because I think there haven't been a number of good forums on the Finklestein Inquiry, say by the Centre for Independent Journalism recently, but this is the first forum really to focus on the new media aspects that are being proposed by this inquiry. And I think it's safe to say that while the Finklestein Inquiry spends a lot of time talking about the new media, it doesn't talk about the new media in the same way that it talks about the print media particularly. It is an inquiry that is, in my opinion, very focused on the print media, and in a sense the internet simply serves as the backdrop of change rather than an actor in itself. And so the recommendations that the Finklestein Inquiry presents to create, in a sense, a new class of regulated content, news and public affairs content, is quite a radical regulatory departure from the tradition of censorship and regulation that we've had in the Australian media over many years, which has tended to focus on channel-specific regulation. While Finklestein rightly recognises the inevitability of both technical and industrial convergence in the media section, I think the recommendations as they pertain to new media are very interesting because they are very undeveloped, really. It's certainly unclear how news and current affairs will be defined, and certainly we've seen a number of debates, regulatory debates, and very important regulatory debates, around the topic of what classifies as news, what classifies as opinion, and what classifies as simply entertainment. And I think we'll all recall Alan Jones's characterisation of himself as not a journalist, but an entertainer, and thus not subject, in a sense, to the regulation under the Cash for Comments scandal. I think we're going to be up for an excellent discussion today, and so I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Richard Stanton, to talk 5 to 10 minutes. At the end of each of the speakers, we'll then have Q&A.
Thanks, Peter. Good to be here. I'm going to see if I can contextualise this in a political sense, so we get a feeling of what journalism is all about, mainly in relation to section 12.59 of the report, in which Finklestein and others say 2 other matters are also relevant to the quality journalism issue. First, the rise of 24-hour news cycles and the spread of news media to social media sites such as Facebook and Twitter. These developments have substantially increased demands on journalists, where in the past newspaper journalists would report daily. Today, many also provide audio and video reports, as well as the article that appears in the next day's paper. In addition, they will use Twitter both to gather and to present news. With the increased demands placed on journalists and the increased complexity of their job, the result is that there is more recycling, less checking, more commentary and assertion. And they're quoting from someone else here when they say a journalism of assertion has replaced a journalism of verification. Let me see if I can contextualise some of this for you. The focus of the report itself is on the production of content rather than the producers of content. I think that's the first important point for us. The production of content rather than the producers of content. And I would suggest that some large media companies aim at a global market while small to medium-sized companies operate within a different, more local environment. So the focus for the inquiry, I think, has been on global journalism and the impacts of global journalism without thinking a lot about localised journalism. The internet, I'd suggest, altered communication structures and economic environments, and globalisation itself dissolved borders for journalists and journalism. There's no longer any artificial stripe across which there is no freedom. So in other words, the artificial stripes that existed as borders or strips, or whatever you want to call them, were in the past relatively important to the journalist and to the journalist as producer of news. Borders were artificial lines marking out the territory of media freedom. Journalism and journalists worked for generations within these imposed boundaries, and the boundaries themselves provided important distinctions between audiences, nations, and the choice of the medium. The internet, for example, has made UN radio broadcasts almost redundant. I've actually said redundant, I've used the word I'll add almost, especially in Africa where they had previously had a great impact. Journalism theories and research, which are embedded in old school content analysis, observation and surveys, three areas of research, now seek meaning outside what I call a normative construct. But normative processes, this is what exists in journalism today and continues to exist, those normative processes that are sourcing, producing and disseminating news remain as they have for centuries. Probably ever since I was a minor newspaper editor and reporter for both Fairfax and Murdoch more than a quarter of a century ago. Although maybe I shouldn't admit that. Analytical empiricism, action, systems theory, social integration and cultural theory now all get a look in as part of wider journalism theory frame. So journalism is no longer framed by normative constructs. And two things to me seem to be playing out in the present media inquiry based on that historical idea or background. The first one is that normative structures and ideas in the sourcing, production and dissemination of news do not have the flexibility to deal with the news media and communication world that we now live in. So those old normative structures still exist, but they're not flexible enough to deal with what's going on. The second one, and these are the two things that I think play out in media inquiry, are the political undertone in which normative media structures have existed, and which, as Lawful Holtz argues, reflect a different historical situation, is being transformed by the present federal government. The political undertone that did exist no longer exists. And the combination of a lack of flexibility and what I'd say is a deep rupturing of embedded social norms, assuming media to be an embedded social norm in the conservative political environment of Australia, is the key to the recommendations being made by the Finklestein Inquiry. I'll say that again, I think it's a combination of lack of flexibility and the deep rupturing of the embedded social norms that is driving the inquiry. Political history in Australia reveals a close relationship between governments and media. And it may be corporate media such as Rupert Murdoch's News Limited, or it may be local community-owned media such as the Weekly Times in Ryde, which is owned by a gentleman named John Booth, or it may be the Corindi Advocate, which is a small newspaper in a northwestern rural town, which has among its ownership a former Labor Senator, Sandy McDonald, and our very own beloved Carolyn Jones of the ABC. Rupert's dad Keith and Kerry's dad Frank and young Warwick's dad Warwick and a host of rural and regional family dynasties have influenced and shaped government policy in the past in Australia. The coziness of these normative functionless relationships were mostly agreeable to both sides, unless, this is the crucial point I think, unless the government had a narrow margin and what I would call radical agenda. Media proprietors are historically conservative and they're looking for a wide rather than narrow margin. The internet goes some way to providing a wide margin, but it's not conservative in its structure and it's thus not fulfilling all the ambitions it was meant to in terms of revenue for those media proprietors. The federal government, for all its deep rupturing of the embedded social structure, is deeply concerned, I believe, about the potentially anarchic direction the internet and particularly professional bloggers may take. At the same time as the government is pulling down the social structures, it's concerned to erect news structures that reflect its own image. The potential anarchy within the net terrifies the crap out of them. I think in this, the Labor Greens alliance is no different to any government of any other colour. Their interest lies the same as anyone else's in controlling information. And while they tinker with how to control bloggers and whether the Press Council is a strong enough vehicle to deal with complaints about the inaccurate or misrepresentations of reporting, other borderlines are being crossed every day. And the two borderlines that are most important for us, I believe, are that between journalism and public relations and journalism and entertainment. My overview concludes with that, so I will be looking forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Hi, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on this important issue. As has previously noted, obviously we live in a rapidly shifting media landscape, and technological change has almost abolished barriers to entry in the fields of media, political commentary and journalism. A new class has developed of amateur and professional bloggers. It's never been so easy as it is today to actually become what is considered broadly a journalist or to produce news and information content. This, I think, is a great boon for us as a society. But obviously it poses a threat to the traditional gatekeepers. Rather than media elites determining what individuals can read, ordinary citizens can participate in the public process, whether it be through launching a blog, microblogging services like Twitter, or commenting on a Facebook page. This has led to an unprecedented diversity in media content and has shattered norms that have been previously established. And I think the real sort of turning point of this, which really signified the death knell of the traditional media gatekeeper role, was what was termed Ruthergate in the US, where a blogger, Charles Johnson, exposed that 60 Minutes used fabricated documents back in 2004. And I think if you look back in history, that was really the key moment when online sort of social generated media really displaced traditional media. Unfortunately, rather than embracing this new paradigm, we've had this disappointing response in Australia now as embodied by the Finklestein report and other activities, whereby we need to revert to government control, we need to revert to a system of regulation and censorship. Rather than embracing this change, we are looking at stifling it. And what we have in the Finklestein report, to be brutally frank, is the most overarching, most disgraceful attempt to censor free speech in Australia we have seen in many, many years. Let's make no mistake about what the Finklestein report actually says, or what it is. It is a draconian piece of legislation that establishes an elite committee of government-funded apparatchiks to de facto regulate blogs, to de facto and provide a licensing regime with the power of censorship and the power to force bloggers to put up content that they may conscientiously object to. In the last year, Australia has plummeted in the international index of media freedom published by Reporters Without Borders, a non-partisan group. We're now 30th. But behind countries that you would think are traditional authoritarian, Eastern Bloc countries like Poland, developing countries like Namibia, Mali, and so forth. This is before this has even come in, after the government was talking about censoring the internet and putting in filters to determine what you can and can't see. What do you think is going to happen once we actually have a government appointed bureaucrat, actually determining what can actually appear online? And where it comes to new media, this is particularly troubling. Under the proposed Finklestein report, any blog which receives notion 15,000 hits a year will be covered by this. Not just journalist blogs, entertainment blogs, opinion blogs, analysis blogs, everything. Now, if you actually break this down, this is 50 hits a day. But if you actually look at this, every single blog gets about 30 hits a day from web crawlers and so forth. So pretty much, if you have a blog, you're going to be covered by this. If you use a microblogging service like Twitter, you're going to be covered by this. And you will have a government body that will have the power to say, sorry, take that post down. Sorry, we don't think that's fair. Put up a post that you disagree with. Now that's if you're a conscientious objector to this and say, I don't want to do this. There's no right of appeal. They don't have to provide reasons for their judgment. And if you refuse their diktat, you can be taken to court and jailed for contempt of court. Now, this may actually work out fine for entrenched media interests. Fairfax, the Murdoch Press, etc. They have a lot of money to pay for legal fees. If you're a small-time individual blogger who publishes things in their spare time, can you really afford all the legal fees to defend this? I mean, so that's really who this is going to hurt. And it's going to, if the recommendations of this inquiry are actually implemented, you're going to see a destruction of freedom of speech on the internet in Australia. As much as the Finklestein report may make lots of nice comments about freedom of speech, etc., if you look at the core recommendation, it is about government control and government censorship. And there was an interesting comment, Jonathan Holmes on Media Watch made a comment the other day, which was, he was criticising, I think it was the editor of the West Australian, who said, well, this is bad, you can be jailed for expressing an opinion. And Jonathan Holmes said, well, this is technically true, and then went on and smeared. And sort of with this usual sort of sneering style. With his argument being, well, you're absolutely right, but it'll never happen in Australia. Well, I'm sorry, these are how these things start. Throughout history, every attempt of government control and government censorship, even if, it's not necessarily advocated as such an issue, leads down this slippery slope. And this is what will be the inevitable result of this proposed recommendation of this inquiry. An inquiry which I failed to see the reasons for. It's an inquiry, trying to create a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. So, where to now? I think we have two choices before us. On the one hand, we can try and revert to a system of regulation and censorship. We can try and impose traditional gatekeepers to try and regulate what we can read, what we can see, what we can think. I was actually given a question by an email by a journalism student at another university about my position to this. And the first question she sort of started with was, well, obviously there's a human right to good journalism. And, a right to be protected from bad. I'm sorry, what? There's a human right? Who on earth is that to actually dictate what is good and what is good bad journalism? Firstly, without meaning to sound all relativist and postmodern on you, that you can't actually have an individual out there saying, this is good journalism, this is bad journalism. But secondly, even if it is bad journalism, so what? Bad journalism should not be a criminal offence. If you write a piece of terrible journalism, it should be subjected to ridicule, you should be attacked for it in the public sphere, sure, but you shouldn't be pulled before the courts if you want to take this down. So I would say that the people who call this, you will have nice people in lofty ivory towers with the hubris inherent in such a position where they think, well, we're great, we can decide what's good. No, I reject this. Let consumers and the Australian public decide. People buy newspapers voluntarily. They consume news voluntarily, well, except for the ABC, which they're forced to pay for. And that's also another issue. Why we have the ABC running a taxpayer-funded blogging service is completely beyond me. But that's another issue. If people don't like the content they're receiving, nobody's putting a gun to their head and saying, read this blog, read this newspaper. They will stop reading. I happen to have a lot of faith in individuals. I believe that they can make good decisions for themselves. And the way forward is rather than regulating and restricting them, we empower them. How do we do this? Not by more regulation, but by less. By continuing restricting the barriers of entry. By further enabling free speech. The risk of seeming completely heretical to one of the latest speakers, I think the Press Council is an anachronism. It's a relic of an outdated era. I don't think we need it. Self-regulation is fine, and look, I will always support any form of self-regulation. But for the Press Council to go out and say, well, let's get bloggers under our power, that's clearly a step in the wrong direction. At the moment, we have a situation whereby people seem to think, well, this is good, The government obviously approves of this, therefore I don't need to fact check for myself. If you move to a system where consumers are empowered and they can make decisions for themselves, that's the way to ensure a free, a robust debate, which is vital for our democracy. Any movement in the opposite direction, to restrict the marketplace of ideas, to say, well, we're not going to let you have a debate amongst yourselves and decide who is right and who is foolish. The Australian is bad because they're campaigning for an issue, as the Finklestein report comments. They're campaigning, it's not journalism, bad. If we go down that path, then how can we actually say we have a vibrant democracy? How can we actually go out and have faith, in our political leaders when people aren't allowed to express their views? We already have sufficient laws, tort law, defamation law and so forth, to prevent people from slander, from lying about something. I can't go out and accuse someone of something without validity. These laws are already in place. Further laws and laws against bad journalism are a step in the wrong direction. The editor of Quadrant magazine, Keith Winshuttle, actually said that he will refuse to comply of any directive that the Media Council puts before him. I think that I commend him for his step, and I would encourage everyone who is a blogger, who is on Twitter, who is involved in the media, if these recommendations go ahead, to engage in civil disobedience and stand up for free speech. I look forward to questions and a debate.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, Andy. Have you been hearing? Okay, I'm going to bring you up if I may. And there's an audience of about 10,000 people here. So I'll just put you to lose me, but I'll come back after you speak for about 5 to 10. Wonderful.
Okay, g'day. Thanks for having me. My submarine in Caulfield Bay. I have to confess that I haven't fully read the inquiry. However, I have read the relevant sections, which for me are what the inquiry has to say about blogging. So I think the questions worth asking in this context are, what does the inquiry say about bloggers and blogging? Secondly, how do bloggers currently deal with the issues raised in the report? And thirdly, what does it mean for online anonymity? And that is, what will it mean if the inquiry's recommendations are actually implemented? So to begin with, what the report says doesn't say a whole lot about blogs as a source of news. But I think the following passage that Tim has already alluded to kind of captures basically what it says. And so I'm quoting now. There are many newsletter publishers and bloggers, although no one could pass the lonely pamphleteer tradition, who offer up-to-date reflections on current affairs. Quite a number have a very small audience, not include mine on the list. There are practical reasons for excluding from the definition of news media publishers who do not have a sufficiently large audience. If a publisher distributes more than 3,000 copies of print per issue, or a news internet site has a minimum of 15,000 hits per annum, it should be subjected to the jurisdiction of the News Media Council, but not otherwise. These numbers are arbitrary, but a line must be drawn somewhere. So that's the quote. I think obviously there's a number of problems with this account. Some of these problems are technical, as Tim's alluded to, and some I think are political. I want to make a few remarks about these problems, mostly based on my own experience as a blogger, and then discuss the implications of the report for anonymity. So, to begin with some context, I began blogging in earnest about 6 years ago. In that time, my blog has received somewhere around 1.4 or 1.5 million views, which is roughly 800 to 1,000 views per day. So in other words, in terms of hits, it would easily come under the jurisdiction of the proposed council. In fact, as Tim's already mentioned, so would a huge number of other blogs which would be categorised as news or current affairs. And so I think this is one of the problems with the line being crossed, or the line being drawn. This is in addition to the fact that these statistics can be calculated in a number of different ways, and actually for technical reasons, HIT is actually one of the least useful. So, secondly, in regards to these technical issues, one question that occurs to me is, how would the council monitor the popularity of blogs? So the statistics I collect are not public, and whether I make them so is entirely up to me. In other words, it's not just a problem with where the line is drawn, as the report puts it, but also with how a government regulator could calculate which blogs actually cross it. And it seems to me that an effective regulator would presumably require access to this data that is otherwise private. And that's a prospect that poses all sorts of other issues. More broadly, in terms of monitoring content and enforcing regulations, there's a few other issues that I think would need to be addressed or that pose problems for a government regulator of this sort. So, what about those blogs that comment on Australian news and current affairs which are hosted outside of Australia? It's technically feasible for someone to author that kind of content while remaining very difficult to trace, and actually would require a large investment of time and energy to track these sites. So that's the technical issues. In terms of political problems, or ones that could be more properly termed political problems, the one that's of most immediate interest to me, they concern anonymity, or relative anonymity. And for myself, it's because I frequently write about the far right and often antagonise groups and individuals that have a known proclivity for violence against their critics. And when I refer to them as the far right, I mean a range of different groups, from neo-Nazi skinheads to members of political parties such as Australia First, white supremacist cults such as the Creativity Movement, members of anti-Muslim groups such as the Australian Defence League, and so on. And some of the individuals who belong to these groups have violent histories of assault and even murder. They've threatened to violently punish me for my writings, and in fact made numerous attempts to find and identify me. That extends to organisations I'm associated with. So, community radio station 3CR in Melbourne has also been threatened as a result of things, the other kind of things that I've written. Now, for me to ensure my own safety and ability to continue writing this kind of content, a relative degree of anonymity makes a lot of sense. Also because I'm blogging independently, I'm not granted any of the privileges or protections a journalist might otherwise have access to, or be able to utilise the resources they can access to protect them from retaliation. So, if, as has happened in the past, community groups that I'm associated with receive visits from armed neo-Nazi skinheads, or individuals who've been misidentified as myself receive threatening phone calls, threats are made on neo-Nazi internet forums, along with appeals to my home address and other details, I'm pretty much on my own and I lack institutional support. And I should add in this context that I often provide information and background journalists who can report on these matters with a relative degree of protection from themselves that's afforded to them by their professional status and their association with news media organisations. Of course, there's other downsides to relative anonymity, and that's to do with opportunities to speak and be public, that I don't accept without risking losing my anonymity. Of course, I also acknowledge that anonymity can encourage irresponsible speech and arguably, in some cases, fosters hate speech. When I think of my own obligation in this regard to I guess, report or write fairly, I think there's also a distinction worth making between my own writing and the commentary that sometimes generates or accompanies it. So, I mean, over time I've kind of adopted or adapted my policy to generally exclude vulgar racist sentiment and violent threats and so on, but there's a few exceptions I can think of which are kind of interesting. For example, the Queensland state election, a guy called Peter Watson was selected for Labor, seat Southern Downs, and Peter had actually been commenting on my blog for many years, and his commentary was of a generally pretty demented nature, racist, homophobic. He wrote that homosexuals are degenerates requiring a final solution. He praised Nazis, Strasser Brothers, Ukrainian National Socialists, and a whole lot of other stuff. Now, at various points during this period, which is quite a few years, actually opted to stop publishing his comments because they simply amounted to trolling and just spam. Despite this, there's hundreds of comments like that on my blog. And what was interesting was that some of this commentary was picked up by Queensland media organisations, the Korean Mail in particular, and it was used to expose him as a racist and a homophobe, and that resulted in his exclusion from the election. He was actually disendorsed by the Labor Party. Now, if I'd not published his diatribes, and many of them actually didn't, I don't think anyone would be the wiser as to his kind of real political inclinations. So I think there's also it's kind of something of a side issue, but in terms of regulating content, there's some kind of utility, I think, in sometimes publishing otherwise objectionable content. And the other point, I guess, is that although the audience of my blog is quite small, sometimes when bloggers publish things, it can achieve significance when it's picked up by established news services. I think that's worth keeping in mind. Also, I mean, I'm relatively anonymous, but I do actually provide a forum for views. I'm contactable, and sometimes I receive requests from people to remove content for various reasons. And I'm actually happy to do so if I think it's fair, reasonable. I won't go into detail about that, but it's certainly possible. And so just to conclude, there's a few final remarks I'd like to make. And one is that I think whatever regulatory regime is imposed in Australia, it has to be kept in mind with global regimes of filtering and, I guess, censorship. And in that sense, I'd include things like the ACTA, the Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement, PIPA, or the Protect IP Act, and also SOPA, the Stop Online Piracy Act. And they have their origins in the United States and have real implications for global publishing. So basically, I guess I'll conclude, I think that's about 10 minutes or so. In regards to the actual report and its content in relation to blogging, I think the three main problems, I guess, it's basically pretty ill-informed, which doesn't provide a good basis for if you're going to regulate you want extra information. It actually creates a lot of technical issues that I don't think can be very easily resolved and create issues of their own. And finally, I think it kind of fails to acknowledge what's distinctive about blogging as a platform. And I'm not sure about collapsing or attempting to bring into classifying blogging, certain kinds of blogging, political blogging, as probably belonging to journalistic practice. So those are the three things I think I've drawn from the report. So, thanks.
Thank you very much, Andy. Wonderful. So we'll just keep going, and next speaker, and then we'll have Q&A. Great. Thank you. Derek.
Thanks, Peter. I think we should probably start by saying something about where the Press Council stands on some of these issues and maybe count a couple of points that have come out so far. But let's start with the Finklestein Inquiry and its recommendation. The recommendation for the Independent Media Council was the preferred model of the inquiry after it put a number of journalists and editors and others around the traps through a number of questions. But it did have an alternative recommendation or an alternative model that it looked at. And the alternative was a beefed up press council, essentially. And in the end it came down on the side of saying, no, we're not going for that. We're going to recommend a statutory model instead. And that's obviously quite important for the Press Council, and from the start of this, we had to play quite a big role because one of the terms of reference of the inquiry was how to strengthen the Press Council. Not surprisingly, then, we disagree with the recommendation of the inquiry, but I think that some of its analysis is actually sound. I do agree with what the earlier speakers have said about the treatment of online media to a large extent. I'll say something about that in a moment. But our position throughout this has been fairly clear in saying that we think that there needs to be a body that's sufficiently independent of both government and industry to command the confidence of consumers. And we think that body needs to deal with setting of standards, handling complaints, and we also think that it's best that that particular body not be a statutory authority. There's a couple of reasons why we think that it's better that it's not a statutory authority. The first is that having it removed from government is probably a good idea, particularly in this area of news and comment, given the role of the press as an institution which holds to account government and others. But also I think that the practical aspects of giving this kind of area to a statutory authority are worrying. We think that there's more scope for an independent body to be able to respond quickly, to be able to deal with complaints quickly, to be able to liaise with editors and reporters and try to negotiate some kind of outcome in the first instance rather than go into a long-winded process that's often involved with a statutory authority when it conducts investigations. There's more potential to do that if you're not a statutory authority than there is if you are. Furthermore, I think the subject matter or the evolving nature of the media lends itself more to that kind of body rather than to a statutory agency. The Press Council has been dealing for a number of years with the websites of its members. So it started as being exclusively a print organisation, and over the last few years, a lot of the issues that we've faced have had an online dimension to them. Not surprisingly, because a lot of people that make complaints are concerned to a greater extent by the lasting nature of comment online than just the comment that appears in the print copy of the newspaper. So we're at the start, as Peter mentioned, we're at the start of a substantial standards project, and we've held some meetings with people in the community. We've brought together the online editors of a number of newspapers, major newspapers around the country, and I've been to talk to the moderator of one of those the websites of one of the major metro dailies, to sit down and just understand on a practical basis what that person's job involves when they get to work in the morning and what they're faced with an avalanche of comments from when articles are opened up to comment streams. So there's a lot of online issues that the big media companies as well are facing at the moment, and it's difficult enough for them to deal with it. We think that we've had a place to work with them than a statutory authority would be. Setting aside the issue about achieving some separation between government and the media. I might also say that where we think that the Press Council is an independent body that has publisher members, public members, independent journalists on its council, is not only better than a statutory authority, but it's better than self-regulation in its purest form, which is that every newspaper does its own complaints. We think that in a number of situations there may be complainants who are equipped to deal with editors in the first instance, but in a lot of cases they're not, and there should be the opportunity for complainants to actually go to somewhere independent rather than just straight to the publication concerned. How we do this is another question. Tim suggested, I think, that the Press Council's out there to bring more bloggers and online media into its coverage. At the moment, we're certainly developing categories, ways in which we can deal better with online media, but we're not suggesting that ought to be compulsory. There is no compulsory membership of the Press Council, and we're not suggesting that we move to that. That may be part of a statutory scheme that's proposed, but it's not part of what we're recommending. And indeed, we see that there's scope for a number of online-only media outlets to be part of the Press Council, that a number of them should be, but that bloggers that deal with news and comment, current affairs, should be able to join up to a body that has a set of standards that they can use as a kind of a hallmark or a marker of their own methods that by which they say, okay, we're prepared to agree that principles such as accuracy and fairness are important, things like distinguishing fact from opinion and so on, and sign up to that set of standards. But we're not proposing that that's compulsory. One thing that I would say about the Press Council itself is that we've acknowledged that in the past we haven't done well enough on performing on complaints handling and on standards, and part of the reason for that is the structure of the Press Council and the way in which it's resourced. A couple of weeks ago we announced that the publishers have agreed to double the funding of the Press Council. It's a very significant step forward in really increasing the resources, enabling us to move to a better standard of complaints handling and focus more on the standards project that Peter mentioned. But what came with that package was a couple of other very important commitments. Firstly, that the obligations that the publishers make to the Press Council will now be legally binding. That's not been the case in the past, and indeed it's been criticism of the Press Council and other self-regulatory agencies. But the publishers are now committed to make those obligations legally binding. And the other important point is that there'll be a 4-year notice period. One of the aspects that made us quite vulnerable in the past was that the publisher could walk out at any time and leave the council without funding that goes with it, but also just leave that gap. Now everyone that's in the Press Council is committed to longer-term membership, and indeed the funding commitments will last for 3 years of those 4 years. So we think that the way that we've been heading is an alternative to the independent, the News Media Council that the Finklestein Inquiry recommended. We think that it has the potential to be, in essence, the midpoint between the statutory authority and the free-for-all that's at the other end of the spectrum. It's just a question of whether or not it's good enough, and we think that the package that's been developed really gets us there. We should also say that we think that the package gives us the potential over time to evolve into an organisation that is able to cover news and comment across other media, not just print and online, but at the moment that's our focus.
Thank you very much. So now what I'll do is, just while you ready your questions for our panel, I'll invite our panellists to return to the front and I'll get them here.